Okay, made myself my little inserts. That was pretty easy. Just turn some steel stock down, drill it out, fit her in. Bolts fit in there nice and snug. That'll be a good tight fit. So the next part is what this mounts to here, which is this flange over here. So now things get, oh, there's some bubble wrap. Alright, so this here, you can see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but we've got some decent wear there. Those things go kind of like fatter in the middle. There, those grooves aren't straight anymore. And as you can see, that moves around a fair bit there. Now when you tighten it up, I think it kind of seats against the end there, and maybe that kind of centers it. So I think what I'm going to do is mount the shaft back up in the drum, because I've got everything together for that. And then I will put this on and tighten it up and measure what my run out is on that. If it's good, I don't know, I've been toying with the idea of maybe just throwing some JB Weld on there and kind of slipping this on and then back off with it clocked hard against one side. Thinking maybe that'll put some material on there to take up a little slop maybe. I don't know. It's kind of risky, right? And I don't know how long it'll last. It is a compactor. It's supposed to shake. So, I don't know. Well, let's assemble this thing and see where we go from there. All right, well, it's kind of good to see this thing sort of half assembled here now. Got her back in the drum, and everything's feeling pretty good so far. Turns nicely. I installed the little flange there, drive flange, and torqued her down. And I've got about, let's see, 11 thou total movement. So that's like 5 thou off center, which I think I can live with. I think I can live with that. So I think the plan is going to be just to bolt her back together as is and see what it does. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Those splines are already pretty messed up, so maybe I eventually have to pull that shaft out, recut the splines, weld it up and recut the splines, and make a new drive hub, perhaps. So I think we're just going to try it. All right, that's it for tonight. I think I'm going to head for home. Okay, that was not fun. I ended up breaking my tap a couple of times. Went in town, bought a new one, broke that one too. Made a mess. Oh, it's in the other room there. Made a mess of the other tap. It was ugly. So anyway, I got her in. It's done now. What a pain in the butt. And what do you know? I put it on backwards. Dang! Now I got to take the whole thing apart again. Not too big a deal. Those little things are supposed to be facing down, not up. So I'll do that and then get this sucker bolted together. Okay, I got her assembled. Everything works. There's a little bit of clearance in there even. Very happy with it, but boy did that suck. I almost wish I had not gone and tried to drill and tap these out for 8 mil. Instead, I maybe should have stuck with the 6 mil, but I don't know. I was just a little concerned with the shear strength. Seeing as this thing doesn't have a unloader valve on it, or what do you call it, crossover valve for when you take the power, when you shut the valve to stop rotation. That motor is nowhere to go, so there's some inertia there. I may install that yet. I did go and throw this in the lathe and just quickly clearance off the top there to make sure that I got clearance all the way around. But that's that. So the next thing will be, do I want to bed those splines in with a little bit of JB Weld or something? Yeah, so I think I'm going to pull this apart now and experiment with that. Okay, continuing on with the compactor project. Next step is setting this thing onto the shaft, which I am very nervous about. As I mentioned, we got some wear on the splines, mostly on the shaft, still a bit inside this, what do you want to call it, drive flange, hub, something. So that brings us to this. So what the heck is this abomination? I'm planning on maybe using some JB Weld to take out the slop in the shaft. So I've created a little experiment here. Carved a couple notches into this chunk of steel here and prepared myself a couple little test samples, which I have, oh yeah, all right. It's starting to harden up a little bit, which I've JB welded into here. Before I JB welded them, though, I coated these with grease, just like I coated the inside of this with grease as a, let's call it a release agent. So the theory being that if this works, and I can, yeah, see, I think this is going to work. The JB Weld is starting to harden up. This one I'm going to leave in overnight, not going to touch it. This one I'm going to move around as I'm doing here, as the JB Weld hardens. What I have used is just the quick weld. Had a couple pair of tubes here of the two-part quick stuff, which is not what I'm going to end up using. I'll use the original formula, or maybe some DevCon or something like that, something a little more substantial. But my experiment is that if I can remove these after the fact, and the release agent is enough to let these slide out of here after, then I have half a hope of getting this off in the future after I JB weld it in place. So one of the only ways to get JB Weld out of something like this would be to heat it really hot, and we're talking like 600 degrees or something like that. So this whole collar here, I would have to heat up to 600, only I can't get at that at all because that is way down in there. So, and of course I can't get that apart to get at that unless I get that off. So you can see that if this gets stuck in place, I am sewered. So the idea is I've coated this with release agent, some good moly grease, and I'm going to coat this up with JB Weld, slip it on when I do my final assembly. And I might, as this stuff cures, take this on and off once or twice, just to make sure that I don't lock it in place too bad. See, this looks like it's moving okay. See, I can slide that back and forth. And that JB Weld is starting to set up. I think this is gonna work. How about that? And that one I'm gonna leave. That one I'm gonna leave overnight and let that cure totally, and then see if it comes apart, because then I might do this all in one shot. See, the danger is that these splines are worn and they've got a wave to them, like it goes thicker and then thinner. So you get JB Weld in there and you've got a mechanical lock, right? And these are not worn near as much, but there is some profile to them. And it's mostly thinner at this end, which is the end that goes on. So theoretically, maybe that might actually pull out after the fact. So this might work, but if you've got two profiles in there, you're going to create a mechanical lock, and that sucker ain't coming apart, period. So we're a little touch and go. So anyway, I will bring him back in tomorrow, and I'll let you know how the experiment worked. Hopefully this works all right, best case scenario, and then we are off to the races. If not, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe just assemble it dry with nothing at all and hope for the best. And that'll be relying on the bolt to hold that up nice and tight, because once it's in tight, it actually seems to hold okay. And if I clock that thing tight against one side, like rotate that against the splines nice and tight, maybe, just maybe, it'll all hold together. Anyway, that'll be it. Like I said, I'll bring you in tomorrow and I'll show you how it went. Okay, it is the morning. This part of the experiment worked okay. This is one I did last night. I moved it around as it was curing. It's nice and tight. That epoxy didn't shrink at all. This is the one I left overnight, and I popped that out this morning here. It's tight. There's no rock in there at all, no movement. I did have to pull on this pretty good to get it to pop out, but it did come out by hand. No tools required, so that's good. It looks like the grease that I used on there was enough of a release agent that it stuck into this part, but not anything on here. Didn't stick to that stuff at all, except for a little bit on top there where it got onto the top part where I hadn't greased. So next step will be to do it on the shaft here. Like I said before, I'm going to apply the cold weld stuff onto there, slide the dry flange here on and off a little bit as it's curing to hopefully make sure that I have clearance that I can get that on and off later. Hopefully that will give me enough support. I did a little bit of research on this stuff, and I think I'm going to use the Permatex product. Partly because that's what I got available. I do have JB Weld available as well. I don't have DevCon around here locally that I can get my hands on quickly, so Permatex it is. It looks like the cold, let's see, they got cold weld and cold steel, and I think I would want the cold steel stuff because it looked like it had a higher compressive strength, which hopefully will equal a little bit better impact resistance, because this is a compactor, of course, and it's going to shake. So, yeah, that's the plan. I will grab some of that stuff here sometime today and get back on this later tonight after I'm done some day job stuff. So, I will bring it in when we got a little more done. Okay, I got my goo mixed up, I got it applied to the shaft, and I got this put on. I made myself a little piece of paper here cut out to fit over the shaft in between. I'm kind of glad I did because of all the ooze out there, keeping that liquid whatever, cold weld stuff from getting into the bearing. So, yeah, it's on there, not so bad, just sort of trying to move it back and forth a little bit. As it is setting up here, I'm kind of trying to keep an eye on where it's at. You can see it's still moving around a little bit there. So I'll just keep doing that, and before she seizes right up, I think I'll pull this thing right off. All right, let that continue to set here over the next half an hour. Okay, I got it pulled off. I think it's going to work. I can see, though, how the excess got pulled back into the groove here. So I am expecting that I'm going to have to go in here with like a Dremel tool and really carefully clean that up so that I get my full clearance. But you can see, where was it? Somewhere in here, you could see where where it had actually filled in the groove on the side. So I think it's going to work. I think. I might try pushing this on one more time just to see. But yeah, I think it's going to work all in all. There's some goop down in here, but this is the side with the grease on it. So that goop will chip out of there real easy, I'm thinking. All right, let's try this again. Okay. Wasn't happy trying to push that on. I got on about like half an inch, and then I gave up because it was getting very firm to push, and I could feel the goo that's in here starting to grab and mess things up on there. So from here, I think I can file that. So there's a little bit of stuff left in there. That'll all clean up pretty easy. I think I should be able just to knock that out of there scrape it out because I've got the, grease inside there. Got a little paper towel in there from trying to wipe it. That didn't work. So from here, yeah, a little bit of work to just clean this up with a file, and I think I can make this thing work. I got a basic profile there. What's this little rubber O-ring thing here? I never noticed that before. Make sure that doesn't get gooped up and welded into there. Push that back. All right. Okay, anyway, we'll let that harden up, and then we'll go to work on it. Okay, spent a bunch of time grinding and filing on this thing. I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be better than nothing regardless, I think. So, I got this thing so that it slides on. It's just a little ways away from the end. I can tap that on. It's feeling pretty snug. And I think just that last little bit, I can suck that in with a bolt, and that'll lock her up good and tight. So, I'm calling this done, as good as it's going to get. And I'm going to start assembling this thing. Okay, got things on here. It's looking good so far. I got that drive flange in there that's seated up nicely. That's the drive shaft there. So next I gotta throw this thing on. Everything's getting assembled with red Loctite. This stuff is, I don't want any issues with this coming apart, so I'll get this on next. All right, so we're coming down to the end, and we're coming back to what started this whole thing off. This is the grease tube that goes to the bearing that failed in there. This is supposed to go to a bulkhead fitting right here, which is very nicely centered between those two rubber mounts, which mount up right here and here. The idea with this one down here is that you can rotate the drum here until it lines up with that hole, and you can grease it. So these two holes are nicely aligned, but this is fixed. It doesn't spin. There needs to be a hole right here to get at that grease fitting, but the hole is not there. It's up here. Like, seriously. So guess how many times that bearing got greased? Like, is this the one? No, it's the other tube. It had absolutely zero grease in it because it had never been greased in its life. So, we got to fix that. So my choice is drill a hole here, that lines up with that hole, or I drill a hole in the frame here. I'm kind of inclined to do this one and leave the frame alone. Maybe? No. I think I'm going to drill the frame. I'm going to drill a new access hole there, and I'm going to make it big so that I've got enough clearance to get like a quick lock type grease fitting on there. Because I think one of those fancy quick lock grease gun tips is in my future. Actually, I think a bunch of them are for all my machines. So, yeah, let's dig out, a hole saw or something, and we'll punch a hole through that, and then we can get this thing installed. All right, that's it. All back together. Everything went together not too bad here. Just putting bolts in and throwing the Loctite on everything. Here's my hole I drilled. Now I can reach that grease fitting that's in there. I did pre-grease everything before I assembled it and made sure everything spun, so it's looking good. The motor went in pretty good. It aligned nicely. Took just a couple little taps with the impact to draw that thing into place. But it is all good, all assembled, but I have not tested it yet. That's the last thing to do. I'll do that tomorrow. But before I can do that, this thing needs a little work. I went out to plow snow the other day, and she would barely push at all. Somewhere I've got a lack of fuel. So I don't know if that was just some water in the diesel that was freezing up, gel and diesel, seeing as it was pretty cold and parked outside. That's why I moved it into the shop here. So we'll try that out. Got some diesel treatment here. The other possibility is that clogged fuel filter. I had run it down pretty low, and I just fueled it up. So there might have been like some crap in the bottom of the tank. Sometimes I get sucked into the fuel system when you run her down low, and I definitely ran it down low, so it could be the problem too. Anyway, if I get some time tomorrow, I'll diagnose that and see if I can get this thing to shake. Okay, here we are, moment of truth. See if this thing works. Oh yeah, look at that. Vibrate. Awesome. Good to see this thing working. Okay. All right. That is really good to see that thing working. The only thing I might want to do now, just to improve things, is put a, what do they call it, crossover relief valve on there. That might be the only other thing that I want to do, just so that I can shut off the hydraulics without having to worry about deadheading and momentum and trying to overrun itself. So yeah, awesome, good. Really glad to see that back together and running. Obviously, I'm not going to be using it right now, but I got to get this thing out of the shop because I have some brakes to fix on the wife's car, and now I have some room. All right, on to the next project. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.